Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Kocek. I'm the founder CEO of Chemical Q Device, here to talk about episode number 53. So there's a lot of stuff in the news. And basically, if you search for a new era in quantum over the years, you're going to see this, in the 2010s, whatever. So the most recent news is basically, so we have IBM and Cleveland Clinic, it's a healthcare, installing the first quantum computer on campus for medical reasons. And then you have additional things as far as you have Biden taking a visit in the past couple weeks to upstate New York, $20 billion for IBM with quantum and other technologies. And basically you have Biden looking at a quantum computer and saying very nice things about it. So our president of the US, and you also have President Obama a couple days ago, he came on. So this is the Chicago Quantum Exchange, and basically he encouraged the students with their studies, and the students voted using quantum cybersecurity for the first time. So that was the big thing there. That area, along with kind of Fermilab and Argonne National Lab, is really big for cybersecurity. So what I'm going to share today are 3 different articles. Now, if you've been following this along, and if not, I have the links to the previous decks and also to the presentations as well, is this thing called quantum imaging processing. Now, it's been around for a while, and I'll go over these flow charts, but basically we're talking potential medical applications, and a lot of times the bottleneck is the computer to do these types of things, or less noise and other types of quantum technologies as well. Now the thing, and especially with the second article, is quantum image representation. This is a huge thing. There's like 27 different ways to do it at least, and I'm going to be focusing on the authors. And basically what they do is it's not NCQI, but INCQI. So adding this alpha, basically this alpha qubit to get quantum advantage in different ways. And then the last article I'll be going over here is with optimizing QML circuits. So this has been going on for a while. And again, as with any hardware, you want to limit the number of qubits, you want to limit gates, these types of things for, for speed, just efficiency, those types of things. And in specific, it's the KNN circuit that wound up the best. So this field, so if you have been part of this for a while, so this is Dr. Salvador Venegas and Draca. He's known as the founder of quantum computing in Mexico. So he's written a book on this quantum image processing. So he shows up here in 2003 and 2020. Now, earlier on, inserting quantum into, getting better imaging has been worked on this theoretical basis for a while. So, in specific, you have Laszlo in 1996, orthogonal images, and then 2003, Beach et al., basically doing Grover's algorithm. And, they're saying in theory, it could be reduced using this algorithm from 3 gigabytes per second to 35 qubits, and I guess in an ideal noiseless world. And then, as I mentioned before, so Salvador, who's been a speaker on this panel before, is basically, he has these approaches to storing, retrieving. So you could look at the first 3 are basically for storing, and then the last 4 for retrieving. And then kind of his whole, the big thing is, I keep coming across this book. It's a Springer book, Quantum Image Processing. And then, so with this first article, so I've shared something else as far as, image formation, image computing, and this is the author's rendition of it. So this is a newer paper this year, I think within the past couple months, and basically there's many ways to insert quantum, right? So you have to think of it, if you have a startup or if you have an established company, what makes the most sense? So if you have image formation, acquisition is more like quantum sensing, you have digitization, and then going into enhancing, and all these rest of these are basically, more computing, so calibration, registration, optimization, transformation, filtering. And then at the bottom there, you see visualization, analysis, and management. So that's the key, is basically, we have to think of things in quantum that make sense, and then you need the corresponding hardware to go with it. And for those of you who are just coming in, is that we're getting, kind of better feelers than we were a year ago when, say, October 1st, 2021, we had INQ's IPO, and then October 6th, 2021, we have Rigetti basically announcing plans that they'll also go public. So, and to see now, we basically have two presidents of the United States, a current and a previous one, in Obama, basically being found associated with this technology. So it kind of puts a lot of hope in it. And especially on the computing side, that's where a lot of these things need to happen. Now, with this paper, there's a number of things you can do. So it's, medical image quantum edge detection. So this is what they call fuzzy and complicated features. You also have segmentation. So these steps are somewhat common. So it's just when I first started discussion a little over a year ago, it seemed to me like we got so creative with quantum algorithms and quantum circuits and all these types of things because we didn't quite have the hardware yet. So in many fields, it seems to me that a lot of these things are built up, based on, let's create the circuit, let's optimize the circuit, these types of things. So when the even if we get, I don't know, 30 qubits, like, INQ is focusing on, they're a lot less noisy, maybe better than several hundred or 1,000, especially, because due to these other complexities with barren plateaus and local minimums. So also there's quantum approach for watermarking for images, and then also for encryption with this. It's called chaos based quantum encryption procedure. So I'm assuming this is a little bit different than the NIST-4 that we're used to hearing from. It's more specific to the imaging. Now, in all of these, so there's like 27 of these. So these are some of the more common ones that this author chose to point out. So I'm going to start in the upper right hand. So INCQI is an iteration on a previous one. So this is multi-channel quantum image representation. So, and especially for the next paper too, I'm going to be talking about representation. So you have that. And then you also have novel enhanced quantum representation, NEQR. So some can do color, some can't. And then the Karaman's quantum image representation on the lower left too. So there's all different types of way to, do things quantumly. And it's not like, this thing that hasn't been worked on for a while. It's been worked on extensively, waiting for the technologies, to run these things. So, and then the upper left is kind of unique, this QALPI. So you have log polar images, and that's the format. It's not like a 2x2 square, for instance. So in the second article, I'm going to focus on, it's this INCQI. So INCQI. So basically, this whole paper is about making INCQI, developing the rules for it, and then testing to make sure that it works. So, towards the end, it did work, and I'll tell you the specific reason why they were using it for. So it's a thing with like anything, right? Like it has great potential for color digital as auxiliary qubits. It's run on a IBMQ 32 qubit quantum simulator with Python, OpenCasm, Qiskit, Anaconda. These are kind of things familiar to programmers. And basically, they just want to make sure that it works. So as you'll see, the issue is the hardware, right? Because quantum simulators are typically noise-less or noise-free. However, the power isn't that much greater. So if we had 32 noiseless qubits, that would be a huge thing these days. But people always want greater qubits, and it's an issue getting up if the noise isn't considered. So this top one, it's just a regular PC. Maybe people are running on a better PC right now. It's a Core i5, 16 gigabits, 64-bit Windows, that you can do for simulation, basically. And then on the bottom is what I want to highlight. So you've heard before, an increase in a qubit doubles the amount of information. Well, this is showing that same exact thing, increasing a qubit, showing the memory requirement. So from 25 qubits at this bottom table to 26, 0.54 to 1. Now, if you start to look at 36 qubits, that's a terabyte. So to 37 qubits, that's 2.2 terabytes. And then to 38, it's 4.4. So it's an exponential amount of memory that's required. So it's worth looking into, because I don't think that's the there's other ways of dealing with this memory issue with other algorithms, potentially quantum machine learning, that you could also get exponentially less requirement for memory, but this is typically how it's perceived today. So this is interesting. When I was studying this, I was like, okay, this is cool because everybody, RGB, and then it's inserting another auxiliary quantum bit for alpha. Now, what they claim it offers is more image processing operations, channel switching operations, transparency of the image, complex color transformations, addition, subtraction, compression, complementary operations, feature extraction. And again, this is compared to the whole INCQI. So this INCQI with this auxiliary quantum bit. It's very interesting, coming more from just, computing, and I've looked at programming before. So this is where the color stops. So they weren't actually able to do color. However, grayscale, they do say, mention it as color or whatever, but it's this 2x4 image that takes 8 quantum bits. So the reason why they ran on 32 qubits on the simulator is because it takes additional qubits. I think their total is like 11. I'll show you. And the overall workflow with this is basically getting the basic information in the image, calculating the quantum bits needed, preparing the position information, prepare the color information, measure the quantum image, and quantum sequence visualization. Now, there's two things. I've been featuring this Los Alamos National Laboratory quantum machine learning article. There's two things that they say that matters. There's sample complexity and there's time complexity. Now, I'll have to look at this more, but I believe most of this is time complexity. It's just, images and, basically how long, those types of things. So here's the staff notation on the bottom. So if this is your first time seeing staff notation, don't be afraid because basically it's not that hard. So Q0 on the bottom, we're looking at the purple vertical bars, is the first qubit, and Q1 is actually the second. That's just how it is. And then it goes all the way down to Q10. That's Q11, or that's the 11th qubit. Now, they say Q0, so the first qubit through Q7, so total of 8, hence the 2x4 on the grayscale, are for the color information qubits. And then Q8 represents the position information Y. And then Q9 and 10 represent the high and low bits of the position information. So this is just one of those things. I believe all this is novel as far as the INCQI or the INCQI that they're doing. And basically to summarize this is that's how they started this article, was basically, INCQI for inconsistent horizontal and vertical position sizes. As you can see, it has theoretical power with color images. And that's just the issue. If you go to run on noisy quantum hardware, higher qubits, it's noisy, and then being limited at 32, 36 qubits for a simulator, that's, you can't go, basically that's kind of what they chose to do, is this grayscale smaller image. But it's good proof of concept. So basically time, cost, memory space requirements increases exponentially with the number of qubits. And there's no, they weren't able to obtain, obviously, this whole goal is for larger size color images. And keep in mind, there's, many, like 27 other ones of these, but this was a Nature article, so probably one of the better ones. And then obviously the limitations with IBMQ, the quantum simulator. So in the third article here, so it's entitled An Optimization Method for Performance and Resource Utilization in Quantum Machine Learning Circuits. Now, I shared last week is basically, you have the elementaries in quantum, superpositioning, entanglement, and then your next step is a gate, and then circuits are composed of gates and other things too. So the reason why this matters is because like I said, it's kind of like the hard work we've been doing, and I say like as a field, is going to pay off because we're optimizing all these things that, say if we had a perfect quantum computer with at least 1,000 qubits, a lot of this work likely wouldn't be needed, right? Because you just run it, it's fine. But like I said, we've gotten creative in quantum, and that's something I thought that, basically a year ago, and that's kind of like reappearing here too. So implementing ML algorithms in quantum computing has the advantage of high execution algorithms. Now the challenge is obviously with classical machine learning algorithms. And then you often, people say, oh, you can't do big data with quantum. Well, quantum machine learning, which, can compose of other, quantum sensing, quantum memory, quantum algorithms, and the quantum computer is actually meant for big data, So again, a lot of these things are hardware dependent, and there's some workarounds a little bit with the noise, but for the most part, that's quantum machine learning is basically, for the bigger data sets. Now you can read through this on the paper if you'd like. So basically to optimize these circuits, and not all of them worked out well as far as, it didn't decrease much time. However, it's still depending on the industry and other factors. It may be, if you have like a 3% gain, that might be great. But anyway, so they have these 4 rules. So these are the authors, so the first one, if there is a not gate, you do this, remove gates that are directly adjacent. And again, this is truncated. For 2 rotation gates that have a shear control, we merge 2 rotations. And this is, again, trying to limit circuit size. So this table is interesting. So these are actually all other authors. This isn't the, I think they showed it because other authors have worked on other things similar. And you see basically the right column is the one that matters, is the speed up. So you go from like 0.1 to 0.6 all the way down to 3.1. Now this KNN is basically what they too found what optimized the best, right? So like, again, like these things aren't, this is better than this because, sometimes, say for instance, like in specific industries, that are on a huge scale and they just need this algorithm, this Grover 1 or this Grover 2. These are familiar, like common algorithms, and you're getting a 0.2 or 0.8% speed up. That might be fantastic, right? So this is the world of quantum circuit optimization. So as I showed you before, so this is, for 4 qubits here, Q0 to Q3. The one on the above is the original KNN quantum circuit, and the one on the bottom is the optimized. So for sake of brevity, they did tests, I think on 2 or 3 other to optimize, and they weren't nearly close to as good as this one. So it seems from other authors, and as well as theirs, they're getting 60.6% reduction in number of gates. So H's or Hadamard gates. Then it's basically saying removing all these little, non-necessary Hadamard gates and, reconfiguring in different configurations. And then here's what I shared from the beginning. So basically from left to right, blue is pre-optimization, orange is after optimization. The number of gates, significantly less, over half gates, minimized. Number of time steps, great. And then how it equated to execution speed, not quite as well, but still at about 50%. I think that's a welcome result. And then in this article, they basically say that, and I'm assuming because the hardware is not awesome yet, is that we need to optimize these circuits, so these gates and Hadamard gates, the everything, like less number of steps, and then to decrease the number of steps and execution time. So they're reporting 10.7 and 14.9% in different circuits, and also like all these things are going to come to fruition, especially as there's more and more political backing and all these other things. Superpositioning to be utilized for prospective exponential quantum storage reduction. So that's just one of those things. It's just like, well, we're going to have huge data, but with other techniques, it's not just computing, it's sensing, it's memory, it's other things. So as far as the future plans for chemical Q device is basically to do a similar type of thing. So I label this option A: create sets of rules for circuit to be optimized, transition from quantum simulators to quantum computers, and then use data transmitted on emerging quantum internet networking. So I was talking about University of Chicago earlier on. Well, there's Argonne National Lab, there's Fermilab, there's DCQNet in Washington, D.C., and then overseas you have British Telecom. And then in D, so what I shared for those who came a little bit later is basically the students in Chicago, where President Obama was this week, is they were using quantum, or they were using quantum cybersecurity. I believe it was PQC to vote or do some task for the first time, right? So it's just interesting to get a lot of these players start to step in. And then I've been sharing QML. So this is the whole thing that if you have this set up, like there's a Google, Harvard, article, Caltech, and basically if you do quantum machine learning with quantum sensing, algorithms, memory computing, is that noise is no longer the principle. Noise can exist on the quantum computer, but they actually took the quantumadvantage computer from October 2019 and proved with these other quantum technologies that you could get these great results. And I've shared this one before. So basically, these are two different ways, two different options, basically with image formation, image computing. And this is talking about, quantum sensing, reconstruction algorithms, and then more computing for the second step there too. And these are sensors basically. So I'm a big fan of this QPSD, quantum phase sensitive detection. They use it to remove audio noise, but they said you could use it for vector magnetometry. So for neuroimaging, Alzheimer's disease, better images. It's basically everything built around this diamond. And then so you have fluorescence, green laser in, measuring red laser out, and then you're doing line amplification with these other demodulations. And other, papers, this bottom left is probably the most comprehensive of them all. It's millimeter scale instead of centimeter scale resolution off a rat's heart. And basically what this one does is, it's the proximity, it's diamond, it's inert. So even though there's other quantum sensors that have developed before diamond quantum sensing, because it was placed closer, it did better than the previous, it's still a current OPM quantum sensor. And then you have MIT's all frequencies. So basically it's fluorescence again, green on the top, red on the bottom, and then adding this mixing step. So they say basically you can detect any frequency. And then accuracy coming from machine learning and this Helmholtz coil to neglect the magnetic information from the atmosphere, to get better accuracy, and then also read out noise with spin amplification. And then, so this is more, so if chemical compute device decides to put together QML setups, these are examples of things to use for the sensor, the algorithm, and computing. And then many of you may find use in this. So these are clickable if you download it on a desktop. So I put this together just to show that these are, it's a good summary from like the past year's work of all the best in quantum sensing, computing, algorithms, internet, cybersecurity. Now, the field itself, and we're talking healthcare, so current neuroimaging, is most, if not all of these steps in image formation or image computing are algorithm based. So just imagine, so people aren't as aware of QML or quantum machine learning, but basically very rarely will you have all steps be quantum data, anywhere from quantum sensing all the way, through quantum memory, the whole kind of thing. But you will start to see all these, quantum technologies when they make sense to incorporate them, like transfer learning, where you have a previous, a known kind of your setup. And then basically at the end, you're just inserting some hybridization with quantum. And it'll be similar to this. So basically, accelerated reconstruction, MIT came out with an algorithm for, medical imaging reconstruction. So it's the hardware matching up with all these kinds of things, neural network layering, and there's already, quantum neural networks, motion correction, MRI denoising, they're algorithms, right? So again, a lot of this is going to be hybrid. So it's, if it's solely running just on classical computer, like hybrid jobs that you have AWS, and then you have obviously brain atlases, quality assessment, segmentation, also a thing with quantum, the software involved, and then a lot of times, so radiomics is basically using machine learning for prediction. So now it'd be machine learning with hybrid QML or QML or something like that. So, just figure a lot of hybrids, at least to begin with. Okay, so the market opportunity is great for global AI and medical imaging market. So we're talking this compound annual growth rate of 45.6%, and that's huge. And they say neurology has accounted for the dominating share of this. So what we're talking about here is the whole AI. You'll hear health AI, these types of things, but whether it's called quantum AI or like the sandbox AQ, where that's AI and quantum AQ, that's to be seen. But you should start to see this just with the level, with NSF here saying practical computer for quantum next year. You should start to see this work its way in. And again, what Los Alamos National Laboratory said is basically you'll have the highest chances, and here it is. You'll have the highest chances, the second one, of quantum advantage if your quantum mechanical processes are quantum data, and they say, so this is a really good article, Nature Computational Science. So in the first one, they say QML will be the natural model to learn, infer, and make predictions from quantum data. Now, we don't have exponential quantum data yet, so you can see these kind of pieced together. And here's where they say exponential quantum advantage will be from sample complexity, not time. So basically brains, these types of things. But, as far as where this works in with quantum image processing or QIP, you still might see this interplay, but that's what they're saying is basically you getting quantum advantage for things that you can't do as well classically. And then, like I've been saying, quantum sensor, quantum memory, and quantum computer, and then they add this likely with hidden parameter extraction. So this is the paper that I've been sharing a lot. So the big ones is the bottom left. So QML saves the copy of the qubit state, entangles it with the next copy, learning about quantum state more quickly. Now, it's spooky action at a distance because it does it quicker by not measuring right away in the classical world, but just stopping and entangling, storing, and then measuring at a later time. So it's kind of, a lot of this is not intuitive. And, as I shared before, so the third column, the principal component is part of the superposition with highest probability instead of the noise. So in other words, it's a lot more robust than just doing quantum hardware, on the Google, so this is, a lot of Caltech and Harvard. And again, this is running that same Sycamore processor, 53 qubits from October 19. So that's cool to see that now they're saying they're getting better results. And these are the results. So basically, Quantum Q took exponentially fewer experiments to reach 70% prediction accuracy. Now, this is comparing quantum against classical. It would be nice to see the quantum versus the original just quantum computer from 2019. It is in a, Science, so it made its way to Science, I think June of this year, 2022. But nevertheless, they're saying there's benefit in using sensing and, in specific, these other quantum techniques along with the hardware. And on the right, you see the 1D dynamics, 2D dynamics, and then you have, the separation, better separated on the top with quantum enhanced. And then if you haven't seen this paper before, I recommend it to anybody. It's called The Big Table of Quantum Artificial Intelligence. So this is not a new thing. This is 1994. And they're, this is, I think it's mostly theoretical, but you see this whole QC column, on the right-hand side is basically all checked off except for one CQ. And then most of these are supervised learning there. So this paper, I came across before, and then I keep reading it. And the more I read it, and it makes more sense now. So they published this in 2016 on the bottom. This is 2016, for instance, the most recent was supervised learning using QC. And then, so QC, for instance, which is most of these, is hybrid quantum classical systems using quantum techniques to solve classical machine learning problems. And then this is from last week as well. So this is what I was alluding for. So earlier on, so that, quantum image processing is more over here on the left. And then, we talked about quantum optimization, which is, the circuits, and then it goes the whole way through. And you'll hear about these algorithms that are tied to other parts of that as well. Now, the thing that everybody's getting excited about is how good is the new hardware going to be? So the first one with IBM, obviously the biggest one now is 127 qubit Eagle. They've taken measures with hexagonal layouts, these types of things. So it's not really the qubits, it's the error, because you can do a lot with a lot of these, sub 100 qubits. And we saw the quantum simulator, which is noiseless at 32. And then, so INQ appears to be, I think this is their most updated one, but they say 32 qubits for next year. And this, there's advantages. So it's slower in gates. It's like 1,000 times slower, but it's like 500 times better coherence is what they say than gate-based superconducting qubit. And then D-Wave's been around for 20 years. And then they started off wanting to do gate-based, computing. They switched to quantum annealing for, up until now. And then now they want to bring it back a gate model, because a lot of these things, with programming, I don't know how you program without gates, but, it's typically, that's the thing, is gate-based. So if you're a little bit behind, or if you want to see, these are a bunch of the decks. And then, so obviously the chemical Q device mission statement is to improve neuroimaging techniques utilizing quantum technologies for better sensitivity, signal strength, and or resolution, leading to advanced prediction and neuroradiology for Alzheimer's disease. This is important for quantum sensing algorithms and computing, and in specific MRI, PET scan, CT, neuroimaging techniques. And the roadmap is in 2023, further develop these QML neuroimaging techniques improvements, utilizing medical research collaborations. And again, the news, a couple of days ago with the Cleveland Clinic and IBM installing the first quantum computer, in healthcare is a huge step. Just says a lot of things as far as, the level of trust, its potential use in the future. And then this is basically a mechanism of the Alzheimer's from 2020. And then this is basically saying like it's a lot more complex than it has been in recent years. Now, for a lot of this stuff, so everything quantum, you need to find an application. So mine is obviously neuroimaging, Alzheimer's prediction. And it's still important to keep up with everything in this developing field that has been developing for a while. And I think most people agree, this is going to develop on its own, and then you're going to start to see the quantum technology kind of work its way in there as well. And then here's some, so Alzheimer's disease organizations, and, say they vary. I've gone on kind of 2 volunteers the past couple of weeks. And so that's that. And then we're going to stop this. And I'd like to hear, so we'll do, let's see. So you can unmute yourself. You can come on. We have a number of people returning. So Bahar, if you want to go first. And then any questions from anybody? We do see some familiar faces here. It's good to see other people. Go ahead, Philip.
Oh, hi, Kevin. I loved your presentation, as I loved your previous ones. And it's, of course, for me, I'm an outsider to the medical field myself. I have members on my team who know a lot about this stuff, but I myself am kind of clueless. So it's something I want to learn about those. So I will probably be coming back to your talks in the long run again and again. But I wanted to ask, so a couple of things I heard. So there is chaos-based quantum encryption. That was one of the things on one of your lists, on one of the countless items that you happen to know about. I wonder what that means, chaos-based, and like, is that another way for just entropy-based quantum encryption? So they all all randomness has to be entropy based. So that seems kind of, and another thing, so noise is no longer a problem. Did I hear right? What was that all about? Quantum noise.
Yeah, so for the first one, quantum image processing, I think it's on a very fundamental level that it's protecting the pixels of whatever's images. So from the sender to the receiver, as opposed to, if the NIST, for PQC algorithms for everything, this is more like that kind of like that tailor-made thing. So yeah, the whole thing with quantum machine learning is basically, it's this Google, Harvard, and Caltech paper. And it's saying if you, by incorporating not just quantum computing, but quantum sensing and quantum memory, that the primary thing is no longer noise. It's the entanglement and coherence between qubits, and in specific storing instead of measuring like you would classically right away. So the data that I shared from them, the two kind of like the charts where it shows like, the quantum does a lot better at like, say at 100 training, it takes 100 training sets where it's like 1,000 or 10,000, for the classical approach. And then the separation of the data between these red dots and blue dots on one of those two. That's basically, it made its way into science. So the original quantum advantage from quantum computing was in Nature. And then over the course of the years from October 2019 until now, there's been knocks on it. And then there's also been kind of the classical experiments catching up. So instead of classical taking thousands of years, it only take like 100. I don't know if it's ever, I don't know. There's lots of literature on this, but basically what they're saying is, I believe it's basically kind of a redemption instead of just solely using quantum computing, using these other aspects. And even the Los Alamos National Laboratory paper goes into this as far as getting the best quantum advantage by starting with quantum data and then using other quantum techniques along the way.
Thank you very much for your response.
Yeah, so it's very fascinating. And like I said, feel free to unmute yourself. I see Ron, go ahead, Drake.
Yeah, you were saying that they were using, or I believe you were saying that they were using quantum algorithms before quantum computers. Is that possible?
Well, not using them, but developing them. So it's the big table of quantum artificial intelligence, QAI. So there's a paper from '96, and it just depends on it's the CC, CQ, QC, QQ. So all the ones with Q are the ones that they're developing. I haven't read them all. There's a lot, but basically the hardware back then, with basically D-Wave just getting started with annealing and them not selling the first commercial annealer until 2011 to Lockheed Martin for $10 million is, that's my guess, is just there's been so much work with algorithms and circuits, and if they even have been implemented on any type of quantum hardware or QML, that it's been negligible in previous years.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
But I guess the point is that these, like, the algorithmic discussions are based on proofs about the nature of quantum phenomena rather than experimental confirmation, right? Until we have the right sorts of hardware.
Well, the issue right now is like with one of these papers, I think it's the first or the second one, is basically the INCQI one, is basically you can run on quantum simulators. So it's quantum mechanics on, you saw their setup. It's like an Core i5 with
But today you can, but in the 90s you could not, right?
Yeah,
like
I don't believe, because in the 90s, probably not, because this is way before IBMQ, I believe.
Yeah, so it's based purely on math about, quantum phenomena, like Shor's algorithm, for example. At the time, they had no way of verifying any of it.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, so Shor's algorithm is an attacker. So it's thought that if somebody had a great quantum computer these days, we could still defend using post-quantum cryptography on conventional computers, so we don't need to defend with quantum all the time. So it's kind of like a bonus.
Anyway, sorry to barge in. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, Kevin, this is Balaji here. Thanks for the wonderful talk. And I know it takes a lot of time to prepare this. It's almost like a research. It takes a month to get this information if I want. You presented within 1 hour all this research paper. It saved my time to understand this. So it's wonderful. And I was attending another conference before this meeting, that is Scale AI. So that was related to one, how we analyze X-rays and other pathological imaging. So they were analyzing millions of pixels. They have an issue to analyze all the pixels. They have to do sampling only because they can't do all the, I mean, they divide that picture into tiles, and they take some samples of the tiles and they analyze using AI algorithms. So in that sample, they may miss some of the pixel, which may have the indication for pathological situation. So to overcome, they have to do one more sampling. So they can't do all the pixel analysis. So in the quantum, I think it is possible because it is having much wider coverage to analyze. So, so you have mentioned QML. Maybe that hybrid model can help reducing sample errors. And when we are analyzing pictures, it has a lot of pixels involved and constructing and analyzing. So yeah, I was thinking any research findings which can enhance this understanding will be helpful. I think you have touched upon this point somewhere in the slide. I have to look into that. Thanks for the talk.
Yeah, appreciate it. Anybody else wants to come on or unmute yourself? And then, so one thing I want to say is basically like everybody views this whole quantum thing as just like an all or nothing thing. It's not. Like say, for instance, MRIs and lasers, the parts in them operate by quantum mechanics. So they're technically quantum sensors. So say we're on our, for vector magnetometry, you know, we've had squids, which is actually the best, but the superconducting part of this quantum sensor has to be liquid helium cooled. So it has the patient is like centimeters away instead of milli, and that's a huge. You actually get a lot better results with today's diamond quantum sensors or OPMs because they can be placed a lot closer. So this is like application, you know. So it's not always like, you know, a lot of people think in quantum computing just always the best, these types of things, and say if they're noiseless. You know, we're in fault tolerant or error corrected regime, these types of things. But it just depends, because say for instance, like the neuroimaging where we are today with machine learning and training and all that kind of stuff, it's like you look at everything and you basically say, can this be done with quantum mechanics, number one, and then what's the thing to do it with? Is that the quantum sensor? Is that quantum memory? Is it the quantum computer? Is it QML, you know, as a collection of those? So yeah, a lot of things just depend. I think a lot of you, most people would be surprised how much quantum technology is already out there. And, you know, a little less on the computing side, maybe a little bit more with sensing, and then we're getting there with internet, and, you know, cybersecurity too. But yeah, it's not like an on-off, like, is this classical, is this quantum? A gentleman, Ron, if you want to come on, he knows about these things as far as QML has classical components. So yeah, you won't likely see all quantum data or quantum devices, you know, in that specific whatever. It's like a transfer learning, you know, so you replace the N with quantum. so whatever it took to get a little bit better results with quantum, and you can call it a hybrid quantum machine learning algorithm.
Yeah, I think we'll be dealing with hybrid systems for quite a long time. And again, it gets back to quantum computers can do certain things really well, but basic things almost not at all. So, for example, you're not gonna use quantum computers to do an accounting system. It's just not gonna work.
So it's going to become a niche kind of thing.
Yeah, well, so you want to put your quantum assets into work where the quantum advantage is going to get you some results, and that's there's a number of different algorithms out there that that can give you that speed up. On real hardware, you're still dealing with noise and scale. On simulators, you can get things to go. I think in the chat I put the term toy problems, because most of what you learn about quantum computing is with the simulators. These are toy problems. They demonstrate what can happen, but they're so small and tiny. They're of little practical use in the real world. The people who are getting real work done are the ones who are, going headlong into the hybrid QML land, where again they're using the quantum to do what it does best, which are things like optimizing different types of algorithms, where the quantum algorithm can do in a couple of cycles what it takes the classical stuff long time. In machine learning land, if you are aware of some of the different layers you can have in your machine learning stack, one of them is called support vector machine, where you basically build in a classifier out of support vectors, and you can use quantum front end on that to get the support vectors to basic normalize is not the word, but to settle down much faster. In other words, you can get your training cycles way down by using a quantum front end, because the quantum algorithms have ways of finding the minimas in different algorithms faster than the standard machine learning, which is just a brute force iterative process. Every training cycle gets you closer to the answer. It is kind of the same thing with quantum, but quantum makes bigger jumps because of the quantum phenomena. So yeah, I think we'll be in the hybrid for some time.
Yeah. So you put in the chat, so exponential. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Ron?
Somebody was asking me in the chat, can you see quantum speed up on simulators, or something to that effect? But so basically, your simulators, for small problems, will show you a quantum advantage. But you have to always bear in mind that the bigger you make the simulator, the slower it gets, because as you showed, Kevin, every time you add another bit to the simulator, you double the amount of memory. Well, that if you get every time you double the amount of memory, you're doubling the computation time too, essentially, because all that memory's got to be pulled into the algorithm. So so again, in simulation you can see some things, but again, these tend to be on toy problems, which are just doing nothing more than proof of concept, showing that algorithms work, but they're not going to have a practical use in business at the moment. Somebody mentioned the Shor's algorithm. Shor's algorithm is based on the quantum Fourier process of quantum circuits have this ability to find periods really fast. And by periods, I mean it's you throw some data into a quantum register and you run this quantum Fourier on it. In a very short amount of time, it can give you probabilities of what the component frequencies of that data is. And this is just one piece of the whole cryptology nightmare that people are expecting. Is they use that quantum Fourier algorithm to generate these periods, and then all of a sudden these periods can be sent back out to classical, and now you're giving classical some really, really good guesses as how to factor a large number into primes. And so it's not exact. And you know, again, everything in quantum is probabilities and noise and stuff. But the whole idea is it makes better guesses. It gets you closer to the problem on every iteration than it do with classical.
Ron, if I understood correctly, you said that quantum is at a disadvantage in some cases over classical. This is something I would like to clinch if I'm not mistaken.
Well, quantum computers, a quantum gate, you know, a quantum computer built with quantum gates, and almost everybody out there is implementing some sort of gate terminology, you know, where you have controlled
yeah, minus
X
D
gates.
wave.
Well, even D wave is going to have some sort of
Right.
notation that shows you that translates into the quantum mechanics, right?
Okay.
So, but if I just look at like the IBM, the superconducting qubits, it's next to impossible to get them to do math, just normal math. But the only thing you can really get them to do is like an increment or a decrement.
But right now, right?
No, I don't see that that's ever going to get better. I mean, unless somebody finds the quantum algorithm that can do long division, I don't, you know, you're just not, I don't know why anybody would work on that, because that's not what quantum computers are going to be good at. They're going to be good at these things of doing like the Fourier transforms, finding these frequencies way faster. So
and Ron, you know, because I come across a lot of things that just have gates, you know, and is it just ion trap and gate-based superconducting qubits that you could literally take your same program and run it on one or the other?
I believe that's probably true. Every hardware type has its limitations, but what you find out is even if like IBM's technology, there is no, actually, as far as I know, somebody told me that this has been corrected, but none of the hardware technology out there implements a Toffoli gate natively, which is a Toffoli gate is like it's a controlled CNOT, but it has multiple control inputs. Okay, so on IBM, the IBM's compiler, transpiler, optimizer. One thing I'm finding out about IBM is there's so many layers to its stack. It's mind bending. How much work has to get done to get your quantum circuit moved into and mapped into their hardware. There's a ton of stuff that has to go on. And you were showing some of the stuff that from that paper where they're doing the gate optimization. That's all the same. That IBM is doing that in one of their layers because they have to, because again, their hardware doesn't implement every quantum gate natively, so they have to come up with ways to use what they can do to implement certain gates. And most of the gates out there, it's just like in classical land. You can build You can build everything out of a NAND gate or a NOR gate if you want to. If that's the only gate you have, you can build everything out of just those gates. It's kind of similar to that, but in the INQs or the trapped ions, there's stuff that the trapped ions can do that is just they have no problem they can essentially entangle any 2 qubits in their system without jumping through hoops. Like in IBM, if you have let's say 8 to 12 qubits in your job, you can't just assume you can entangle any qubit with another qubit. And that's part of what IBM's lower layers does, is they remap everything so that the gates and the interactions that you want are placed on their grid in such a way that they can all get done. Whereas INQ, you could just pick any 2 things, and it has this mechanism. They call it the qubit dance. I sort of think of it as the qubit or the quantum Rubik's
How far
cube.
apart? I mean, I understand that in superconducting, you can need that. And
Right, but so like IBM's folded hex array or double hex array, each qubit can only interact with up to most of them only can interact with 2 neighbors.
Yeah.
A bunch of them can interact with 3 neighbors. About a third of them can interact with 3 neighbors. But there is no mechanism, like if on their latest chip has 127 qubits on it, you can't get the qubit in the bottom left corner to talk directly to the one in the upper right corner. For most of the algorithms, it doesn't matter. You can just rearrange your circuits and
swaps.
And this is all the quantum developer isn't even paying attention to this. It's everything that's going on underneath, where they're just taking the circuit that you want implemented, and it's routing. They call it mapping and routing, and it gets it onto their hardware in such a way that hopefully it works. And in some cases, they have to insert extra gates here and there. So, and every time you do that in IBM land, the big in the real world hardware, the bigger your algorithm, the more problem you have with noise, and the longer your timeline in the algorithm, you're fighting the coherence problem, and the noise, as that timeline moves from left to right, the noise gets worse. And and IBM has really been doing a good job trying to keep a lid on that. But
I appreciate all that, Ron. Is there anybody that we haven't heard from? So Beth or Omer, go ahead. And then if not, we have Sorab or Drake. Go ahead, Drake.
I was pretty much answered by the last comment. Thank you. I also blue screened, so I didn't get to hear when he was addressing my issue. So I'll just have to go back and watch it too.
And then Rita or Sorab. And then if not, we have Risky or Carlos. And then if you haven't talked already, feel free to come on. Did you have something, Philip? So
Just
yeah,
a thank you.
A lot of this is complex, and it all work its way out if you still stay in quantum. Now, I always go to its AWS Briquette's pricing, and so they always have listed in recent months the ion trap as the most expensive to use. Now, I talked to one of the hardware manufacturers in ion trap technology, and they say they freely use gate-based superconducting Q. And it sounds like it just depends on that on the task, So it isn't like one's gonna, the other's gonna, but I would definitely say as far as what I'm reading is potential exponential quantum speedups, it's sounding like gate-based, like, because I've heard other ones creating gate, I don't know, but that's the only two that I've heard of. Go ahead, Drake.
Quantum computing, when it does finally hit the public, I'd imagine it's going to be really expensive and we can't really access it right now. And other than making formulas for when we are able to, what is the use of becoming familiar with it right now? Or, or how can we, prepare for when we are able to get something like that?
Yeah, well, I've always been told that it's going to be up in the cloud, like the powerful quantum computing for the next couple of years at least. And then as far as hopping on right now, I mean, some of the papers that I shared right now, they can do certain things with quantum simulation. And most of the research papers, and actually a gentleman, his name was Zoran, was on, he works for, a big company, but they used a lower qubit number of their gate-based superconducting qubits along with quantum simulation. And I wasn't quite sure the split, but there's interesting things you can do. There's definitely papers being published, beyond just like, here's the challenges of QML, some more, well, you have sensing, but as far as quantum advantage with just a computer, a little bit harder. And like I said, with the QML and the Google, Harvard, Caltech thing that has a lot more promise. But I don't know. I think there's value in creating your own circuits. There's a company called Classic. I don't think they keep your IP like some of the other ones. I think QCware keeps, like, they literally have your IP. But there's a fair amount of research as far as doing innovative thing with emerging hardware. And the guiding beacon I've had since maybe earlier this year was the NSF 2023 practical quantum computer. And then the $20 billion in IBM, for upstate New York. And, President Biden is staring at a quantum computer saying good things about quantum. And it's a Bloomberg article. So, there's in the Bay Area, so we call it Bay Area, I'm in SoCal, but like this is San Francisco area. There's already 6-7 companies that focus on some aspect of quantum technologies. In Colorado, you have 2 hardware manufacturers, New York with IBM, Maryland with, INQ. And there's been 3, I mentioned before, but there's been $3 billion plus IPOs, D-Wave, Rigetti, INQ. But, that's just, and then to install a quantum computer at Cleveland Clinic with IBM, that takes a little bit more than just, we're just in the early phases of research and development. And now maybe we're more ready to try some stuff in healthcare. So that's just my spin. And then anybody else we haven't heard from here? I'd like to hear, so this reminds me when I first got into quantum, because there's levels of uncertainty, right? And then getting this IPO on October 1st, and then this announcement on October 6th of 2021, and then starting the discussion and keep finding stuff. I'm very interested if anybody would like to share their introduction to quantum, and, how you got into it. Feel free to unmute yourself.
I got started on quantum because you mentioned it at a tech meeting.
And you said somebody mentioned at where?
You mentioned it at the San Diego Tech, I forget what it was called.
Coffee?
Yeah, the coffee.
For those that don't know, in San Diego, we have 3 or 4 tech coffees in different cities, all around the cities, Del Mar and San Diego and Chula Vista. So, and online. The virtual one, anybody could join. And then, anybody else we haven't heard from?
Yeah, actually, hey Kevin, I actually heard from quantum more because in undergrad I was chemical engineer, so I was doing quantum mechanics actually course, and it definitely helped things like introducing the idea of like laser tools that are already getting used nowadays, but you wouldn't think as like a quantum tool. So
Right.
And then I already now do computer science. Definitely, that's why I match both interests. And so that's kind of what my experience with it. But I still like agree that I would like will be hybrid for like pretty much like a really long time, and it's good to know the weaknesses and strengths. So, but that's still also like an exciting time.
And I would encourage anybody, if you're just new to watch or buy, it's Chris Worley or Worley. And he has quantum computing for babies, but it really is the principles, because if you don't understand superpositioning and entanglement, that's quantum computing dealing with quantum mechanics, okay? So you can have different aspects of quantum mechanics coming off of like the QRNG security chip that they use in these Samsung Galaxy quantum phones. It's taking LED light, and somewhere in there it's operating by the principles of quantum mechanics. And there's other sensors that have been on the market. There's a PAR sensor, and it's more, I think, aggro. But somewhere along the line, if it uses quantum mechanics like an MRI does, it's technically a quantum sensor. So quantum sensors have been around for many years. Quantum memory is somewhat more loose. I don't know the most recent, but maybe 20 milliseconds tops. So what I'm talking about is basically you want all the quantum components to give you the greatest quantum advantage. And like Ron said, is basically more than likely we're going to be dealing with hybrids, especially next year, that aren't quantum data, that aren't quantum everywhere, right? So they play together. So you have to think it's not this mystical thing. It's just basically the specific aspect that abides by quantum mechanics. Do we have a device that can measure it for sensing? And do we have something now for computing that we're getting a lot more into? But yeah, so in the chat I posted, so I'll post this discussion, and then I'll post the deck there too. And any other last questions? This has been episode 53.
Do you have these on your YouTube?
Yeah. So if you look at the top of the chat, I put the YouTube, those two little bit.lys are for YouTube and then for decks.
I blue screen, so I can't see them anymore. Would you please post it again?
Oh yeah. And here's the links in the chat there. If you'd like to download the chat, you could do so. Open up the chat, click on the triple horizontal dot, and then you can click Save Chat. And if there's no other questions or comments, this has been, once again, episode 53, Thursday, October 20th. Appreciate everybody coming on. And then feel free to post your LinkedIn's there too. And, have a good, productive rest of your week. Take care, everybody.
All right, great, thank you. Oh, and I just checked on it. It doesn't save the entire chat, just the chat that you were a part of.
Okay. So yeah,
Thanks, Kevin.
yeah, I appreciate everybody coming on too and speaking. Thanks again.